I guess you could say that for many years now, definitely well over a decade, I've been engaged in a process in myself of, Dionisio asked me a question a really long time ago, and that is something that has been like really to the forefront of my whole spiritual unfolding, which is how do you discern the difference between projection and true transmission? How do you know to extract when it's not like something that's imaginary, something that's a construct or projection of the mind, from really like actually channeling and receiving something, right? So this has been a point of exploration for me, a very important point of entry for me into taking a very, very close look at my own stuff and my own projections, expectations, illusions, and getting very familiar with all of this. And so this is, this is a yogic practice. This is actually one of the branches of yoga. It's called svadhyaya, and it's the practice of self-study. And so this is something that you encounter in Buddhist traditions. This is something you encounter in Vedic traditions, like in Advaita Vedanta. And the practice of self-study is simply that. It's turning the mirror on yourself and really looking at all the stuff, and some of that includes really getting familiar with our own like fantasies that we like to indulge in and kind of perpetuate. And so this is something that I have, I wouldn't say it's not that it's not for the faint of heart, but it can be kind of humiliating sometimes, actually, and require one to take a look at something that one was absolutely gung-ho, 110% convinced was truth, and really maybe it's an elaboration, a mental elaboration, and also where does it come from? Because again, going back to what we were talking about before about us as impressionable beings, and that we take in impressions, and so again, yoga, practice of self-study, the practice of sensory stewardship, they go very much hand in hand. And so all the impressions that we're taking in, including that which our maestros are telling us of what to expect, to what degree does that set us up to look for a certain kind of expectation? So I'll give you an example. The very first diet I made in Amazonia in like 2002, I dieted Bobansana. And before I dieted, all these people were like, oh, Bobansana, it's going to be so great. It's a water spirit. It looks like a mermaid, it's all these things. And so I was like, cool, that's going to be great, And so I had an expectation when I went into my diet that I was going to have like dreams with mermaids and things like that. And that didn't happen. Okay. But my first diet was so transformational that my entire life changed drastically after that, but not in the way I would have expected. I had an accident in Peru. I fell off a horse at like 12,000 feet in the Andes and like crushed my foot and had reconstructive surgery in Peru. And my whole life got put on hold at that point because I did not set out to come down here and like learn curanderismo. I was a dabbler at that point, and for me, I was coming down to experience, I wanted to drink a lot of ayahuasca. For me, even dieting a plant was like a secondary thing at that point in time. I was like, oh, okay, why not, And so when that experience happened and I had that operation and basically the prognosis wasn't very positive, they weren't sure if I'd ever walk again. And that put me in a very delicate and fragile predicament in my life because I had no insurance. I had no savings. It was like I was in a really dire position. And so I started to diet because that was what was available to me. I was grounded here in Peru for months. And so I did this 3-month diet. I dieted chuchuasi, uña de gato, and renaquilla, and suelda con suelda. And in 5 months, during that time, I left Peru. And the first time, I was telling Diony the other day, the first time I left Peru, 5 men hauled me in a stretcher onto an airplane. Okay. So it was like not at all what I expected. My expectations about the Bobansana diet were like completely crushed. Right. And so that still didn't hammer it home. That was something that this was an understanding that has come hard won over time. But basically being engaged in a process of looking at all of my stuff, all my expectations, all of my wounding, all my trauma, all the projections and illusions and kind of like imaginary things that I create about what I would like my life to be like, but might actually be different from what my life actually does look like. I had a conversation with one of my clients the other day who was having a very difficult moment. And she said to me, our mentorship is ending and I don't even know what I've gotten out of this. And it's like, okay. I could be offended right now, but I'm choosing not to be. And so I had sent her a message later on and I said, even if the only thing that you glean from this 3-month mentorship is the understanding that you cannot expect something outside of you to do something for you. You can't expect that the rose is going to do something for you, the ayahuasca is going to do something for you, the curandera is going to do something for you, that you have that understanding clear, that it's you that needs to do this. Nobody else around you. It's not because you signed up, paid money, made the trip down, whatever it is, it's on you to walk, right? Even if that's the only thing, which I don't believe it is, but even if that's the only thing that you come away with, then you've made progress, okay? Because that's, for me, I feel like that is the point of, that's the portal to begin, is when, Michael, when we take a deep look at our confusion that each of us have. And so if we're kind of at the point where, well, you might be confused, Aubrey, but I'm not confused. It's kind of like with addiction. It's like, what's the first step in the 10-step program is you need to admit that you're an addict, that you have a problem. It's the same thing. It's like we need to move through that portal of admitting to ourselves that we're confused, that we don't really know, okay? And that from there is the starting point. Because if we're like, oh no, I know, then you're not really open and receptive to receive because you already know, or you think you know. So in terms of what you're saying about the subtle effect of the plant and how what you were saying about in this lineage of Shipibo curanderismo with opening and closing the diets and things like that. So that was something I observed this year working with the group virtually, that there were some people, for example, who were like, so, like, when are we going to open the diet? Like, what's the time that you're opening the diet and like the Ikaro and all of that? And so that was an interesting question. I needed to take some time to contemplate and sit with that. Because for me, Michael, I don't feel like these things, it's not like opening a door in the physical dimension where it's like the door is open and now the door is closed. For me, the process is a little bit more subtle, the way that I intuit and experience it personally. So for me, it's kind of like it's a gradual aperture and then a gradual closing. That's something that I've been really playing with lately. And because I've been feeling this more and more, I personally have been doing very extended post-dietas, like several months of post-dieta after I close the diet, because it's not like, oh yeah, I got that Ikaro and like it's done and now I can just like go about my life again. It's actually, the aperture takes time to close back down. And so even though your maestro, this is just my personal experience. And, I absolutely respect other people having differing opinions about this. But I know personally that my experience is grounded in 2 decades of being immersed in this wisdom system. And that doesn't mean that I'm not closed to other people's experience as well. I'm always very interested and curious to hear how other people experience these things beyond the kind of anecdotal hearsay, meaning somebody told me it's like this, so it must be like this. Well, what's your personal experience of this? And how do you know that your experience is not being influenced by impressions of what somebody is kind of guiding you toward having expectations of the experience, like, oh, the Bobansana has the spirit of a sirenita. I mean, I have definitely had lots of visions of sirenitas over time. I'm not negating. So that's what I really want to say is it's not a yes or no. It's not like it's like this or it's not like this. It's really important, I think, for each person to for me, like the blueprint that I think is really important. I draw a lot from my yogic experience, and so the self study, developing right habits and right behaviors and right attitudes. These are precepts that you find across different wisdom traditions, right? From like Egypt and the traditions of like the cult of Ma'at, who is the embodiment of truth and harmony and equilibrium in the universe and in the cosmos, to say yoga. So you can, when you see these kinds of similarities in these ancient systems, for me, that feels like tangible and real to me. And that's kind of what I use as like a guideline. And so, and again, there's no quick fix. So like self-study is not something you decide to do one morning and you're good. This is a moment to moment process over the lifetime. And it's not until you're engaged in this for many years that you can start to observe what the effect of it is. But I do believe that that is the process. So really clarifying the vessel of different kinds of learning how to extricate the external impressions and how they influence us and what we believe from what, having the spaciousness to allow spontaneous transpersonal mystical experience to arise from within.
Yeah, I mean, one way that maybe you can also give your opinion about this. What I feel when I think back upon, for example, my Bobinsana dietas. What I remember most is just the surprising amount of healing or processes that I was undergoing, and it wasn't something that I expected, but I probably just had a lot of stuff. My heart needed a lot of healing, and so it was not. I never had dreams or visions about sirenitas. In fact, I can't really even remember many of the visions that I had during the ayahuasca ceremonies. But what I do remember is waking up, like weeping in the middle of the night because of some dream that sometimes didn't even make sense to me, but it clearly touched something. And so I was just weeping in the middle of the night. Or I would wake up in the middle of the night and there was like an energy going through my chest. And I had drank ayahuasca for a long time before, so you kind of recognize certain energetic processes happening, but it was really the first time that it was happening without any medicine, just in the middle of the night, things happening, and it became so frequent that I would wake up and realize, oh my God, there's something happening. I think it's a surgery, but I'm so tired, I'm going to go back to sleep. And then I would wake up in the morning and usually feel better, So I guess in terms of the spirit of the plants, I don't really see the spirit of the plants as like a visual representation, because I realize that can come from many things. We all have different minds and imagery, but I recognize it from kind of the healings that I had to go to. So everything is kind of measured, and even strong dieta versus weak dieta, I kind of think, wow, that was a strong dieta because I had to go through so much. And that almost drove me like to the point of collapse. But at the end, I feel like things were released or I became stronger. So that's kind of how I measure the dietas and how I perceive the spirit of the plant.
So I would say, and I tell you, for me, the verdict, like the true truth for me, is still out, because I've observed how my perspectives about these things have refined and evolved over time. And so I don't consider that I'm like at some kind of finite point of, I feel like it's a continuum. And so my perspectives will continue to refine themselves over time as I continue to have more experience in these fields. But something that I've thought a lot about lately with ayahuasca is, because if I had a dime for every time I heard someone say, the ayahuasca did, said, taught me X, Y, and Z, I would be totally set. So, and that's always very interesting because I'm often, it's like there's so much going on. Like there's so much going on like a biochemical level. There's so much going on like other more subtle vibrational, energetic, karmic levels. How can you be sure that it's the plant that's speaking to you? And this is not to say that ayahuasca does nothing, because if ayahuasca does nothing, then I would not have devoted 20 years of my life to this path and continue to walk this path. It's not that at all. It's just that I feel that we as humanity are kind of coming out of, we're kind of healing ourselves from the process of outsourcing our healing and our everything to something external to us. It's kind of like the healing the wound of religion, regardless of whatever religion. Sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but this idea that you need like a mediator that's going to interpret your experience with the divine, right? So it's like you automatically think that you're just not capable, or even with birth, the idea that you need a doctor that's going to help you to deliver your baby, even though your body is biologically wired and has been for many millennia to do this. Even though you might not consciously know how to do this, your body knows how to do this. And so I feel like we are collectively coming out of this process where we've been disempowered and basically taught that we don't know how to do anything for ourselves and that we need outside help to do anything, including have a spiritual experience or a spiritual relationship, right? And so I feel that kind of collective manifestation of the ayahuasca did this to me, the ayahuasca told me this, said this to me, healed me, for me personally feels like a residue from that paradigm, which we are healing ourselves from. And where I sit now, and trust me, I've said many times that the ayahuasca told me this, showed me this, did me that. That those words have come out of this mouth many, many times. But at this point, my kind of perspective about it is that ayahuasca, and maybe even all the plants, because I started to kind of contemplate this morning when I was wandering around the sanctuary, and Michael, you would love it here this time of year. So many of the master plants are in flower right now. So many. Yeah, it's been raining ahosacha blossoms and bobansana and bea caspi, and the piñones are flowering and the coca's going off and all of this. So I've been, kind of walking around and just contemplating a little bit about this. I had a feeling we were going to discuss this. And my feeling is that we are just beginning, humanity, we are just beginning to glimpse the full spectrum of how expansive we are in our consciousness, right? And so the different plants kind of attune to different aspects or different vibrational frequencies of this enormous spectrum or continuum that we embody in our consciousness. We may not even be aware of this at all. And so what I almost feel the plants are doing, and not just the plants, because, you can work with minerals. And, for example, from an animistic perspective, you can work with the energy of different aspects of the land, like the river or certain rocks and boulders. Or this year I did 2 interesting dietas where I interface with different planetary energies, so working with the planetary energies. Every sentient being that exists in the cosmos has its intelligence and is a reflection of the divine. And so as we are that, what do they say? That we were made in the image of God. And so for me, what that means is that, this is kind of going off on a tangent, but this is interesting. So in the Amazon, they talk about the madre of a plant, or the madre even of like a paiche, which is a huge ancient fish, right? And so when they talk about the madre, what they're talking about is like, madre obviously means mother, but they're talking about kind of like the oversoul of a species, right? Like the And I was thinking about this morning as I was looking at all the cocas and seeing how all the cocas were blooming in different places, right? And it's so amazing to me, and even though science has kind of studied this, how plants in different areas will bloom at the same time. So this kind of like interconnection, how is that working? I'm not going to go into that right now. I know that there is some scientific study about that, but I think about it in terms of like Amazonian cosmology, about the madre of a plant, the spirit that has this kind of innate or inborn program or blueprint, which everything kind of follows. You know, it's kind of like how in the wild, animals don't need to be taught how to birth or how to nurse or how to raise their young. It's all kind of, it's part of that blueprint. And so we also have that. And so looking at it, like cross comparing it with, say, from a Gnostic perspective, the Gnostics talk about the anthropos. Have you ever heard about this? The anthropos is like the template of humanity in the image of the divine. Okay? And so us, beyond all of our traumas and all of our, like lower qualities that we're in the process of kind of owning and sorting through, we have this anthropos template, each of us, which is this blueprint of divinity within. And so for me, more and more, I start to see ayahuasca and all of the plants as reflectors of different aspects of, so when we work with these plants, when we take them internally, there's an interfacing that's happening, again, from a very dense kind of, biochemical level all the way to like a very subtle energetic vibrational level. There is an interface, a dance between our consciousness and between the sentient intelligence of that we are working with, whether it's a rock, whether it's a star, whether it's a plant, whether it's a tree. Okay. And so when we're interfacing with that sentient intelligence, stuff happens, right? It's really cool. A lot of really cool stuff happens. And so I don't like to limit myself by having expectations like, oh, well, I heard that this and that and the other thing happened when you diet this plant. I don't even tell people, when I have people who diet with me, I never say anything about anything like that, because I want people to have a very clear slate to experience for themselves and to discern autonomously what's happening, because perhaps what you experience as the spirit of ayahuasca or the spirit of Bobinsana is very different than maybe what somebody else experiences, or what maybe the curandero who's guiding your dieta is telling you is typically what is experienced. And so for me, I like to kind of move beyond the preconceived ideas and notions about these things, and more than outsourcing our power to something outside of ourselves, like, oh, I just need to drink a few more sessions of ayahuasca. I need to have a few more sessions of ayahuasca or a few more dietas, and my life is going to be, I'm going to have the vision of what my direction of my life is. I'm going to know. It's like, oh gosh, it's like, that for me is almost painful to hear when I hear this kind of line of, manifestation. It's like something outside of you that's going to give you what you need to direct that vessel, which is your life and your sacred, your body and everything. There is nothing, for me, there is nothing external to us that is going to give us any answer. I'm absolutely sure of this. I do not think that this is something that will change over time for me. I truly believe that there are tools that can help us to activate and unearth this, what I like to refer to this as is our inner navigation system. And so for me, the coaching that I do, the integral shamanism mentorships that I do, that Dionisio does, even though we have our own perspectives about these things, I would say fundamentally, the essence of it is about spiritual sovereignty. It's about the process of moving away from looking at something external to you as giving you something that you need, your healing, your understanding, your clarity, whatever that is. There's nothing external that's going to do that for you. And so in order to get to that point where your inner navigation system starts to kick on and you're not calling the tarot reader, or consulting your runes, or running to the jungle to diet so you can get clarity about where your life is going. It's about cultivating that inner spaciousness so you can allow space for whatever can arise, for whatever needs to arise within you. And that might not happen like that. And a lot of times we have expectations that it should, like, oh, I'm going to the jungle to do an 8-day dieta, so this should be pretty much wrapped up by then, right?